Commander Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the USS Liberty and watched the massive space station grow larger on the main screen. The structure was unlike anything humans had ever built, with twisted metal arms reaching out in all directions like a giant spider made of steel and lights. This was Nexus Prime, the meeting place where Earth would first speak with the rulers of the galaxy. Jake felt nervous sweat on his forehead, but kept his face calm. Behind him, Dr. Lisa Carter checked her datapad for the 100th time, reviewing everything they knew about the alien species they were about to meet. Captain Ron Hayes stood near the communications station, ready to call their small fleet if things went wrong. The 3 escort ships following them looked tiny compared to the alien vessels they had passed on the way here. Amy Brooks, their science officer, pointed to the screen where strange ships moved around the station. Some looked like metal fish swimming through space, while others appeared to be made of crystal that caught and reflected the light from nearby stars. The biggest ships belonged to the Zephyrians, a race of tall reptile-like beings who seemed to run most of the Galactic Federation. Their vessels were dark and covered in sharp edges that made them look dangerous even when just floating in space. The communication system crackled to life, with a voice that sounded like rocks grinding together. The translator worked hard to turn the alien words into English. "Human vessel, you will dock at port 17 and wait for escort," the voice said. "Do not deviate from assigned path or your ships will be destroyed." Jake nodded to his pilot. "You heard them, Lieutenant. Take us in nice and easy." As the Liberty moved toward the docking port, Jake thought about how they had gotten here. 3 months ago, a small alien probe had appeared near Mars and broadcast a simple message in broken English. The message said that Earth had been watched for some time and was now ready to join the galactic community. The probe had given them coordinates and a date for this meeting. President Kate Sullivan had chosen Jake to lead the mission because of his experience with difficult negotiations. On Earth, she had also given him secret orders that he carried in a locked case in his quarters. Those orders were only to be opened if the aliens made unreasonable demands. The docking process took over an hour because the alien port was designed for ships much different from human vessels. Finally, they felt the gentle bump that meant they were connected to the station. Jake straightened his uniform and looked at his team. "Remember, we represent all of humanity today. Let's make a good impression." The airlock opened with a hiss, and they stepped into a corridor filled with beings from across the galaxy. Jake tried not to stare at the creatures around him. Some walked on 6 legs, others floated in the air, and a few looked like they were made of living metal. The smell was strange, too, a mix of chemicals and scents he could not identify. Their escort was a Zephyrian who introduced himself as Sub-Commander Thekful. He was 8 feet tall with green-brown scales and yellow eyes that never seemed to blink. He led them through the station without speaking, clearly showing that he thought humans were not worth his time. The meeting room was enormous, with a curved ceiling that showed images of space and distant stars. Around the circular table sat the most powerful beings in the galaxy. Jake recognized some from the files Earth had been given. There was Commander Vixtel of the insect-like Kethver, whose people controlled much of the galaxy's military. Next to him sat Advisor Melthion, a creature that looked like a walking tree with too many eyes. The Zephyrian leader, High Counselor Zethmar, spoke first. His voice was deep and cold. "Humans of Earth, you have been granted the honor of joining our Federation. Your species shows some promise despite your primitive technology and violent nature." Dr. Carter leaned forward. "We appreciate this opportunity to join the galactic community. We hope to contribute our skills and knowledge to benefit all members." The High Counselor made a sound that might have been laughter. "Contribute? Your species has barely learned to leave your home planet. You will be classified as Tier 7, the lowest level of membership. This means you cannot access advanced technology, your trade rights are limited, and you must pay tribute to support more advanced civilizations." Jake felt anger rising in his chest but kept his voice steady. "What kind of tribute?" "Resources. From your home system, raw materials, food production. Perhaps some of your people to work in our mines and factories." Zethmar replied as if discussing the weather. Amy Brooks spoke up before Jake could stop her. You want to make us slaves? The room fell silent. Several alien beings made threatening gestures. Commander Vixthal clicked his mandibles together rapidly, which Jake had learned was a sign of anger among the HFY. High Counselor Zethmar stood to his full height. You forget your place, primitive? This is how the galaxy works. The strong lead and the weak serve. Accept these terms or return to your small planet and remain isolated forever. Jake looked around the table at the faces of the galactic powers. He saw arrogance, dismissal, and the certainty that humans would accept whatever scraps they were offered. These beings had ruled the galaxy for so long that they could not imagine anyone challenging their system. We need time to consider your generous offer, Jake said carefully. Perhaps we could return to Earth and discuss these terms with our leaders. You have one standard galactic month, Zethmar replied. Return here with your answer. Choose wisely, humans. The galaxy can be a dangerous place for those who stand alone. As they walked back to their ship, Lisa whispered to Jake, They think we're weak and desperate. Jake nodded grimly. That might be their biggest mistake. Admiral Steve Parker watched the enemy ships approach Europa through the tactical display in his command center. The HFY fleet looked impressive with their dark hulls covered in weapon ports and sensor arrays. 12 heavy cruisers and 30 smaller escort vessels had jumped into the Sol system 3 hours ago, and were now heading straight for Jupiter's ice-covered moon. The alien commander had sent a simple message to Earth. The HFY Empire was establishing a protection colony on Europa to ensure human compliance with Federation law. Any interference would be considered an act of war against the galactic community. The message was polite, but the threat was clear. Steve knew his forces were badly outmatched in terms of raw firepower. Earth's Space Navy consisted of only 8 combat ships, built in the months since first contact with the aliens. The ships were smaller than the HFY vessels and carried weapons that were primitive compared to alien technology. But Steve had something the enemy did not expect. Dr. Greg Martinez stood beside him, reviewing data from their intelligence network. Greg had spent weeks studying captured alien technology and enemy tactics from the Federation database that Jake Morrison had secretly copied during the diplomatic mission. What he found had surprised everyone. Their ships are powerful, but they fight like they're following a computer program, Greg explained to Steve. Every battle in their records follows the same pattern. They line up in formation, fire their biggest weapons, and expect the enemy to surrender or die. They have not faced an opponent that fights back creatively in over 200 years. Engineer Nina Rodriguez had worked day and night to modify human weapon systems. She had found ways to boost the power output of their energy weapons by overloading the capacitors for short periods. The trick would destroy the weapons after a few shots, but those shots would hit much harder than the aliens expected. Captain Ron Hayes commanded the lead ship, the UES Defiance. His crew had trained for months in unconventional tactics that would have made traditional naval officers shake their heads in disbelief. Instead of meeting the enemy head-on, Ron planned to use Europa's gravity, and ice geysers to confuse their sensors and create opportunities for surprise attacks. The HFY fleet moved into orbit around Europa like they owned the place. Their commander, war leader Krixthek, began broadcasting orders for human ships to withdraw or face destruction. Steve could hear the arrogance in the alien's translated voice. The HFY had conquered dozens of worlds and saw no reason why Earth would be different. All ships, this is Admiral Parker, Steve spoke into his communicator. Execute Plan Chaos Storm. The human ships had been hiding behind Jupiter's radiation fields, using the planet's magnetic interference to mask their approach. Now they burst from concealment at maximum acceleration, their engines pushing beyond safe limits to gain speed. The HFY sensors, designed to track conventional military movements, took precious seconds to recognize the threat. Captain Hayes led his ship in a diving attack that skimmed the surface of Europa so closely that ice crystals scraped against the hull. The modified weapons fired once, twice, 3 times before burning out completely. But each shot punched through Kethver shields like they were made of paper, sending 2 enemy ships spinning out of control with massive hull breaches. Lieutenant Commander Julie Adams commanded the UES Stormrider and used a tactic that no sane military academy would ever teach. She flew her ship directly into a cloud of ice and debris from one of Europa's geysers, using the natural phenomenon to hide her approach. When she emerged from the cloud, she was only 50 meters from a Kethver cruiser's command section. The human torpedo that Julie fired was not just an explosive device. Nina Rodriguez had packed it with a computer virus that Dr. Martinez had designed specifically to target Kethver systems. The torpedo's warhead was small, but when it penetrated the enemy hull, the virus spread through their computer network like wildfire. Within minutes, the cruiser's weapons stopped working and its engines began firing randomly. War leader Krixthek could not believe what he was seeing. His powerful fleet was being torn apart by inferior ships using tactics that made no logical sense. Human vessels darted between his cruisers like insects, too small and fast for his heavy weapons to track effectively. Every time his gunners thought they had a target locked, the human ship would do something impossible like flying through a gas cloud or using a moon's gravity to suddenly change direction. Commander Pete Sullivan brought his ship, the UES Liberty, up from beneath the Kethver formation. His crew had been hiding in the shadow of Europa's South Pole, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. The Liberty Bell carried humanity's newest secret weapon, a modified mining laser that Nina had turned into a cutting beam capable of slicing through alien armor like butter. The beam carved through the hull of the Kethver flagship from engine to bow, causing massive internal explosions that lit up space like a new star. War leader Krixthek barely had time to send an emergency message to his superiors before his command ship broke apart around him. Dr. Lisa Carter monitored the battle from Earth's command center, analyzing how the aliens responded to each human tactic. She noticed that the Kethver ships had trouble adapting to changing situations. Their crews seemed trained to follow predetermined battle plans rather than think independently. When those plans failed, they became confused and made mistakes. The battle lasted only 2 hours. When it ended, 8 Kethver ships had been destroyed and the rest were fleeing toward the edge of the solar system. Human losses were lighter than anyone had dared hope. 2 ships were heavily damaged but still functional, and only 37 crew members had been killed compared to thousands of alien casualties. Steve Parker knew that winning one battle did not end the threat to Earth. The Federation would send larger fleets with better preparation next time. But something important had happened here that would change everything. For the first time in centuries, someone had defeated a Federation military force in direct combat. News of the battle spread through the galaxy faster than light itself. On dozens of worlds, oppressed species who had never dared dream of freedom suddenly began to wonder if the Federation was not as powerful as it claimed to be. The humans had shown that superior technology and numbers could be beaten by intelligence, creativity, and the willingness to fight for something important. Agent Sam Mitchell, working deep in Federation space, reported that several alien governments were quietly asking for more information about human military capabilities. Some were even hinting that they might be interested in forming closer relationships with Earth if the price was right. Jake Morrison, now serving as Earth's ambassador to the galaxy, received dozens of secret communications from species that wanted to know how humanity had achieved the impossible. The Battle of Europa had done more than protect one moon. It had announced to the galaxy that Earth would not be anyone's slave, and that the Federation's days of unchallenged rule might finally be coming to an end. President Kate Sullivan called it the beginning of a new age for humanity among the stars. Agent Sam Mitchell moved carefully through the crowded market on Valish Prime, keeping his human features hidden beneath a hooded cloak that local traders commonly wore. The planet was home to the Delph, an aquatic species that had been serving the Federation as forced laborers for over 300 years. Their blue-green skin and gill slits made them easy to spot among the other alien species that frequented this border world. Sam had been working undercover for 6 months, building connections with species that the Federation treated as lower-class citizens. His mission was simple but dangerous: find aliens who wanted freedom and were willing to fight for it. The Battle of Europa had proven that the Federation could be beaten, but Earth needed allies if they wanted to survive the coming war. A young Delph named Quamish approached Sam's fruit stand, which served as his cover identity. The alien's movements were nervous, and he kept looking over his shoulder at the Federation security guards who patrolled the market. Sam had been waiting for this contact for weeks. "I hear you sell fruit that tastes like freedom," Quamish whispered, in broken standard Galactic. It was the code phrase that Sam's network used to identify potential recruits. Sam smiled and handed the Delph a piece of modified Earth apple. "The sweetest kind? Would you like to know where it grows?" That night, Sam met with a dozen representatives from oppressed species in the basement of an abandoned warehouse. The group included Delph water workers, crystallite miners, and even 2 Luminari who had escaped from Federation energy farms. Each species had suffered under the current system, but none had ever believed they could fight back until they heard about humanity's victory. Marine Colonel Rick Stone appeared on the holographic communicator that Sam had set up. Rick was broadcasting from a secret training facility on one of Saturn's moons where human military instructors were teaching alien volunteers how to use Federation tactics against Federation forces. "The key is not to fight like they expect," Rick explained to the gathered aliens. "The Federation has been winning for centuries because everyone tries to beat them at their own game. Humans succeed because we change the rules." Dr. Carol Jensen had been working with alien biology for months, developing ways to help different species overcome their physical limitations. Her breakthrough came when she found a way to modify Delph breathing apparatus to work on dry land for extended periods. The modification was simple but revolutionary. For the first time in their history, Delph warriors could fight alongside land-based allies without needing constant access to water. The crystallites presented a different challenge. Their silicon-based bodies were incredibly strong, but they moved slowly and had trouble with rapid temperature changes. Carol's team developed protective suits that regulated their internal temperature, and included small rocket boosters that let them move faster in combat situations. Agent Beth Taylor ran counterintelligence operations from Earth, feeding false information to Federation spies while protecting the real activities of the Resistance Network. She had identified 3 major intelligence leaks in the early days of the operation and eliminated them before they could compromise the growing alliance, the Federation's ruling Council of 12 had dispatched Inquisitor Vexthal to investigate Earth's activities after reports of unusual alien behavior in several border systems. The Inquisitor was a tall, thin creature with gray skin and black eyes that seemed to see everything. His species, the Voidwalkers, were known for their ability to detect lies and hidden thoughts. Beth had been preparing for this investigation for months. She created an elaborate deception that showed Earth trying to develop new trade relationships with minor species while hiding their real military preparations. The false evidence included fake communication logs, staged meetings with harmless alien merchants, and carefully planted documents that made human activities look innocent and slightly desperate. When Inquisitor Vexthal arrived at Earth, he was greeted by Ambassador Jake Morrison, who played his role perfectly. Jake appeared nervous and eager to please, giving the impression that humanity was still intimidated by Federation power and hoping to avoid further conflict. "We want nothing more than peaceful cooperation," Jake told the Inquisitor during their formal meeting. "The incident at Europa was a misunderstanding. We were simply defending our territory as any species would." Meanwhile, Admiral Kevin Ross was secretly constructing a new fleet in the asteroid belt beyond Pluto. The construction sites were hidden inside hollowed-out asteroids, invisible to normal sensors and protected by fields of space debris that make casual observation impossible. The ships being built there incorporated the best of human and alien technology, designed by mixed teams of engineers who were creating something entirely new. The hybrid vessels had human creativity in their design but used modified alien power systems and weapons. More importantly, they were built from the beginning to be operated by crews from multiple species. The command systems could interface with Delph bioelectric fields, crystallite mineral-based computing, and luminary energy manipulation abilities. All at the same time, Captain Alex Turner commanded one of the first completed hybrid ships during its secret test flights. The vessel responded to his thoughts faster than any human-built ship ever could, while his alien crew members contributed abilities that enhanced every system on board. The ship's Delph navigator could sense gravitational currents that human instruments missed. The crystallite engineer could literally merge with the ship's computer systems to perform repairs that would normally take hours. The luminary weapons officer could channel additional energy into the ship's systems during combat, boosting their performance far beyond design specifications. Dr. Paul Wright made a discovery that changed everything when he analyzed ruins found on 17 different worlds across Federation space. The archaeological sites contained evidence of an ancient galactic civilization that had operated on principles of cooperation and equality between species. Most shocking of all, the record showed that the current Federation leadership had deliberately destroyed this earlier civilization and suppressed all evidence of its existence. The ancient records described a galactic community where different species shared knowledge freely and worked together to solve problems that no single race could handle alone. Technology was shared based on need rather than political status. Conflicts were resolved through negotiation rather than conquest. The civilization had lasted for thousands of years before being destroyed by the ancestors of the current Federation. Rulers. Sam Mitchell's network spread this information throughout the galaxy, using hidden communication channels that the Federation could not monitor. The revelation that their oppressors had destroyed a better civilization to maintain their own power sparked outrage among countless species who had never questioned the current system on the mining world of Kronos 7. Crystallite workers stopped their operations and demanded equal treatment. The Delph refused to continue maintaining underwater facilities on dozens of worlds. Even some of the mid-level Federation species began questioning why they supported a system that benefited only the most powerful races. Colonel Rick Stone reported that recruitment for the Resistance had increased by 300% in just 2 months. Weapons caches were being established on key worlds. Communication networks were expanding beyond anything the Federation could track or control. Most importantly, the different alien species were learning to work together instead of competing. For Federation approval, the Inquisitor completed his investigation and reported to the Council of 12 that Earth appeared to be focusing on legitimate trade development rather than military expansion. His recommendation was to continue monitoring human activities, but to avoid provoking another direct confrontation that might lead to more embarrassing military defeats. What Vexthal did not know was that Beth Taylor had used advanced human psychology techniques to influence his investigation without him realizing it. The false evidence had been presented in exactly the way that would make a void Walkermind accepted as truth while missing the real activities happening right under his nose. President Kate Sullivan received Sam Mitchell's final report with satisfaction. The network was ready. Across the galaxy, millions of beings were prepared to fight for freedom when the moment came. Earth had built something the Federation had never seen before, a true alliance based on mutual respect and shared goals rather than fear and domination. Captain Alex Turner watched the Luminary colony ships burning in space and felt rage build in his chest like fire. The Kethver Empire had launched what they called a resource optimization campaign, claiming that the energy-based Luminary consumed too much power to be economically viable. In reality, it was genocide disguised as business efficiency. The Federation Council had approved the operation with a simple vote. 12 species decided that an entire civilization should die to save. Energy costs. No one had asked the Luminary what they wanted. No one had offered alternatives. The powerful had spoken and the weak were expected to disappear quietly. Alex commanded the UES Phoenix, one of the new hybrid ships built in the secret asteroid facilities. His crew was a mix of humans and alien volunteers who had trained together for months. They understood each other better than most Federation crews understood their own species. When Alex gave orders, his people responded like a single organism with many different abilities. Lieutenant Commander Julie Adams served as his first officer, coordinating the complex task of evacuating over 2 million Luminari from their doomed homeworld. The energy beings could not survive in normal spacecraft for long periods, so human engineers had modified cargo vessels with special containment fields that provided the electromagnetic environment the Luminari needed. The evacuation had been running smoothly until the Kethver patrol fleet arrived ahead of schedule. War Commander Thexanol had brought 47 ships to ensure that no Luminari escaped their fate. The alien commander broadcast his intentions clearly across all frequencies so that nearby systems would understand what happened to species that required too many resources. "This is Captain Turner of the Earth vessel Phoenix," Alex responded on the same frequency. "We are conducting humanitarian evacuation of civilian populations. Withdraw immediately or face the consequences." The Kethvar response came in the form of plasma cannon fire aimed at the nearest refugee ship. The vessel's shields collapsed under the assault and atmosphere began venting into space. Julie quickly coordinated damage control while Alex brought his ship between the refugees and their attackers. The Phoenix returned fire with weapons that surprised the Kethver fleet. Human engineering had combined alien energy systems with human tactical creativity to produce guns that could change their frequency and intensity in real time. Instead of firing the same type of blast repeatedly, the Phoenix's weapons adapted to each target, finding weaknesses in enemy shields that the Kethver had never bothered to fix because no one had ever exploited them before. Dr. Carol Jensen had modified the ship's medical facilities to handle energy-based life forms, but she quickly found herself treating wounded from multiple species as the battle expanded. Luminari refugees who had been injured in the first attack were brought aboard, alongside human crew members and alien volunteers who had been hurt during the fighting. The evacuation convoy was spread across 3 star systems, with refugee ships moving slowly to avoid damaging their precious cargo. Each transport carried thousands of Luminari in specialized containment fields, but the fields were fragile and could not withstand combat stress. If the ships were damaged, their passengers would die instantly. Commander Pete Sullivan led a squadron of escort ships that had been modified for maximum speed rather than firepower. His job was to stay ahead of the convoy and clear the path of Kethver patrols before they could threaten the refugees. Pete's ships used hit-and-run tactics, striking fast and disappearing before the enemy could respond effectively. The running battle lasted 18 hours and covered 7 light-years of space. Alex's ship fought a continuous series of engagements while protecting the slower refugee vessels. His crew performed miracles of endurance and skill, with human adaptability combining with alien abilities to overcome opponents who should have been impossible to defeat. Engineer Nina Rodriguez worked desperately to keep the ship's hybrid systems operational under combat stress. The combination of human and alien technology was powerful but complex, requiring constant adjustment and repair. Nina had to think like a human while working with tools designed for alien hands and systems that responded to mental commands from multiple species. The Delft navigator, Quamish, used his people's natural ability to sense gravitational currents to find safe paths through dangerous regions of space. His guidance allowed the convoy to travel through nebulae and asteroid fields that would normally be impossible to navigate, staying ahead of Kethver forces that were forced to take longer routes around the obstacles. War Commander Thexanol could not understand how inferior ships were consistently outmaneuvering his superior fleet. Every time he thought he had the humans trapped, they would do something that violated basic military doctrine and escape again. His casualties were mounting while the enemy convoy continued to slip away from his grasp. The crisis point came when the convoy reached the Helios Nebula, a region of space filled with electromagnetic storms that interfered with most types of sensors and communication. The Kethver fleet was waiting on the other side, knowing that the refugees would have to emerge eventually. It appeared that the evacuation had finally been stopped. Alex made a decision that would have been considered insane by any normal military commander. Instead of trying to fight through the enemy fleet or find another route, he ordered the convoy directly into the heart of the nebula where the electromagnetic storms were strongest. The Luminari refugees actually helped with this desperate plan. As energy-based beings, they could sense the patterns in the electromagnetic chaos and guide the ships through relatively safe channels. What looked like a death trap to solid matter species was actually a highway that the Luminari could navigate by instinct. The refugee ships emerged from the nebula in Federation space, where Kethver forces were not allowed to pursue them without causing a diplomatic incident. Alex's Phoenix was the last ship to clear the nebula, with hull damage from electromagnetic discharges. But all crew members alive and accounted for, the successful evacuation became legend within hours. News spread through the underground network that humanity had risked their own ships and lives to save a species they barely knew. The action contradicted everything the Federation taught about survival and competition between races. Dr. Paul Wright analyzed the political impact from his research facility on Earth. The Luminari rescue had demonstrated something revolutionary. To the galaxy, it was possible for one species to act purely for the benefit of another without expecting anything in return. The concept of selfless cooperation was so alien to Federation thinking that many species initially refused to believe the reports. Agent Sam Mitchell reported from the field that recruitment for the resistance had exploded after news of the evacuation reached oppressed populations throughout Federation space. Species that had never dared to dream of freedom suddenly began asking what they could do to help. Earth's cause, the crystallites of the mining world Titan's Edge, went on strike and demanded equal treatment for all worker species. The Delph maintenance crews sabotaged Federation facilities on dozens of worlds simultaneously. Even some of the middle-tier Federation members began questioning why they supported a system that would commit genocide for economic efficiency. Colonel Rick Stone found himself training volunteers faster than his facilities could handle them. Resistance cells were forming spontaneously on worlds that had never been contacted by human agents. The galaxy was waking up to the possibility that the current system could be changed. The Luminari refugees were settled on a world in human space, where they could rebuild their civilization in safety. Their gratitude took the form of sharing their advanced understanding of energy manipulation with human scientists. The technology exchange strengthened Earth's capabilities while providing the Luminari with the resources they needed to recover. From their near-extinction, High Counselor Zethmar called an emergency session of the Federation Council to address what he termed the human problem. The rescue of the Luminari had caused unrest throughout Federation space and threatened the stability that had kept the current system in power for centuries. These primitives must be stopped before they inspire others to similar madness, Zethmar declared to the assembled rulers. Order must be restored before the galaxy falls into chaos. But it was already too late for simple solutions. The spark had been lit and was spreading faster than the Federation could contain it. On 1,000 worlds, oppressed beings looked up at the stars and wondered if freedom might actually be possible. Earth had shown them that cooperation could triumph over oppression, and that sometimes the right thing to do was also the smart thing to do. The revolution was beginning, and there would be no stopping it now. General Helen Brooks stood in the command center on Mars, watching displays that showed rebellion breaking out across the galaxy. What had started as scattered resistance movements had exploded into full-scale revolution after Dr. Paul Wright's team released the complete historical records of the ancient galactic civilization. Species that had served the Federation for centuries now knew their rulers had destroyed a better system to maintain their own power. The evidence was undeniable. Archaeological records from 47 worlds showed the same pattern of deliberate destruction. The previous galactic community had been peaceful, cooperative, and prosperous for thousands of years, before being systematically dismantled by the ancestors of the current Federation leadership. Libraries had been burned, scholars executed, and entire populations relocated to break up cultural memories. Admiral Don Clark commanded the Terran Space Navy from his flagship, the Taz Unity, as Liberation fleets struck Federation strongholds. Throughout the galaxy, the ship represented everything humanity had learned about cooperation and technological integration. Her crew included members from 23 different species, all working together with an efficiency that amazed observers. From traditional Federation worlds, the human fleet had grown, beyond anyone's expectations as more species joined the Alliance. Delph engineers had improved human ship designs with their understanding of fluid dynamics and energy flow. Crystallite workers had strengthened hull materials using their mineral-based technology. Luminary technicians had enhanced weapons and defense systems with their mastery of energy manipulation. Engineer Roy Patterson oversaw the construction of the first truly multinational starships in orbital facilities around Jupiter. These vessels were designed from the beginning by integrated teams that included the best minds from dozens of species. The result was ships that no single race could have created alone, combining technologies and approaches that the Federation had kept separate for centuries. The Alliance fleet's greatest advantage was not superior firepower but superior coordination. Federation forces still fought like individual species trying to prove their worth to the ruling council. Alliance crews functioned as unified organisms, where each member contributed their unique abilities to achieve common goals. Captain Susan Moore led the assault on the Federation naval base at Kepler Station, a fortress that controlled access to 3 major trade routes. The station's defenses had been designed to stop conventional attacks using predictable tactics. They were not prepared for an assault force that included Delph swimmers moving through the station's water supply, crystallite infiltrators who could merge with the metal structure, and luminary saboteurs who disrupted the energy grid from inside the power conduits. The battle for Kepler Station lasted 6 days and became a model for liberation tactics throughout the galaxy. Instead of trying to destroy the fortress, Alliance forces captured it intact and converted it into a base for further operations. The station's former commanders were given the choice of joining the Alliance or being transported to neutral territory. Colonel Rick Stone had trained Alliance ground forces using human military doctrine adapted for multiple species. His soldiers fought with a level of integration that Federation forces could not match. A typical Alliance squad might include human tacticians, Delph scouts who could sense enemy positions through vibrations in the ground, crystallite heavy weapons specialists who could carry massive guns, and luminary support troops who could provide energy for extended operations. The Federation's response was predictable but ineffective. High Counselor Zethmar ordered massive military mobilization and declared martial law throughout Federation space. Traditional tactics that had worked for centuries were employed against enemies who refused to follow traditional rules of engagement. War leader Crixthal, promoted after his defeat at Europa, led a counterattack against Alliance positions in the Vega sector. His fleet was 3 times larger than the human force defending the liberated worlds, equipped with the most advanced weapons in the Federation arsenal. Military doctrine said he could not lose. The battle began exactly as Federation planning predicted. Crixtal's ships formed up in standard attack formation and opened fire with their heaviest weapons. But instead of meeting them head-on, the Alliance fleet scattered in all directions, using maneuvers that looked like complete chaos to traditional military observers. Captain Alex Turner, now commanding a squadron of hybrid attack ships, led his vessels through the enemy formation like sharks swimming through a school of fish. His ships appeared to be acting independently, but they were actually following a complex tactical plan that used each species' natural abilities to maximum advantage. Human ships provided the strategic thinking and adaptability that kept the overall plan flexible as conditions changed. Delph vessels used their ability to sense gravitational fields to predict enemy movements before they happened. Crystallite ships absorbed punishment that would destroy other vessels while continuing to fight. Luminary craft moved with impossible speed and agility, striking targets from unexpected angles. The Federation fleet found itself fighting dozens of separate battles simultaneously instead of one large engagement. Their command structure, designed for centralized control, could not adapt fast enough to coordinate responses to threats coming from every direction at once. Dr. Lisa Carter monitored the battle from the Alliance command ship, analyzing enemy responses and identifying patterns that could be exploited. Her team had studied Federation military doctrine for months and found critical weaknesses that came from centuries of fighting inferior opponents who used predictable tactics. "They're trying to reform their battle line," Lisa reported to Admiral Clark. "Same formation they used at the Battle of Procyon 3 years ago," Don smiled grimly. "Signal all units to execute pattern thunderstorm." The Alliance ship suddenly changed direction and accelerated toward the center of the Federation formation. Instead of trying to avoid the enemy's heaviest weapons, they charged directly into the most dangerous area of the battlefield. The move was so unexpected that Federation gunners hesitated for crucial seconds, unsure how to respond to targets that were acting completely irrationally. President Mary Campbell stood at the podium in the Great Hall of the new Alliance Congress building on Earth, looking out at representatives from over 300 species. The chamber had been designed to accommodate every type of being in the galaxy, with sections for water-breathing Delph, crystal platforms for the crystallites, energy fields for the Luminari, and countless other environmental needs. The building itself was a symbol of what cooperation could achieve. Human architects had worked with alien engineers to create something that no single species could have imagined. The walls were made of crystallite-grown materials that could change color and transparency based on the needs of different species. Delph biotechnology kept the air and water clean, while Luminari energy systems provided power that never failed. Mary had been chosen as the first Alliance president not because humanity demanded leadership, but because other species recognized that humans had a unique talent for bringing different groups together. The election had been unanimous, with even former Federation worlds voting for the human candidate who promised equality and cooperation. "We gather today not as conquerors and conquered, but as equals in a new galactic community," Mary began her inaugural address. "The Alliance is built on the revolutionary idea that every species has value and every voice deserves to be heard." Dr. Tony Lewis headed the Alliance Technology Sharing Initiative from his headquarters on Luna. The program ensured that scientific advances benefited all member species rather than creating new divisions between the powerful and the weak. Within months of the program's launch, former Federation slave worlds were developing their own advanced technologies and contributing innovations that helped everyone. The Delph had shared their mastery of biotechnology, leading to medical breakthroughs that saved lives across the galaxy. Crystallite mineral processing techniques revolutionized construction and manufacturing on hundreds of worlds. Luminari energy manipulation made faster than light travel safer and more efficient for all species. Tony's greatest challenge was convincing species to share their most valuable knowledge freely. Centuries of Federation rule had taught everyone to hoard advantages and trust no one. The breakthrough came when humans demonstrated the principle by sharing their most classified military technologies with former enemies who had tried to conquer Earth. Just years before, Admiral Janet King commanded the Alliance Defense Force from her flagship, the AS Unity. The ship's crew included representatives from 47 different species, all working together with an efficiency that amazed visitors from non-Alliance worlds. The Defense Force existed to protect member worlds while respecting their independence and cultural differences. Janet's greatest success was not winning battles but preventing them. The Alliance Defense Force had stopped 3 potential wars between member species by intervening with peacekeeping forces that helped resolve disputes through negotiation rather than violence. The concept of solving problems without conquest was spreading throughout the galaxy. The Kefir Empire had been among the last Federation holdouts, but even they eventually joined the Alliance when their own people demanded the freedoms they saw in Alliance territory. Former war leader Crixthal now served as an Alliance admiral, using his military experience to train integrated crews that combined the best traditions of multiple warrior cultures. Engineer Roy Patterson completed work on the first generation of truly universal starships designed from the beginning for crews from any species. The vessels included life support systems that could be configured for dozens of different biological needs, control interfaces that worked with various types of sensory organs, and living spaces that could be adapted to any culture's requirements. Captain Bill Morgan commanded the AS Unity, the flagship of the Alliance exploration fleet. His mission was to explore unknown regions of space and make contact with species that had never been part of the Federation system. The ship's mixed crew represented the best of Alliance cooperation, with each species contributing their unique abilities to the success of the mission. The exploration fleet had already made contact with 12 new civilizations in the outer rim of the galaxy. Unlike the Federation's approach of conquest and subjugation, Alliance first contact teams offered friendship and mutual cooperation. Most of the new species chose to join the Alliance after seeing how different member worlds worked together as equals. Dr. Carol Jensen led the Alliance Medical Research Institute, developing treatments and cures that worked for the incredible diversity of life forms in the galaxy. Her team had eliminated 3 major diseases that had plagued multiple species for centuries and created universal medical techniques that could be used by any Alliance world. The Institute's work was made possible by the free sharing of biological knowledge between species that had never cooperated before. Delph understanding of fluid-based biology combined with crystallite mineral processing and luminary energy manipulation to create medical miracles that improved life for billions of beings. Agent Sam Mitchell had retired from intelligence work to become the Alliance's ambassador to newly contacted species. His job was to explain how the Alliance worked and help new members integrate into the galactic community. Sam's greatest satisfaction came from meeting species that had given up hope of ever being free, only to discover that freedom was not only possible but welcomed by hundreds of other worlds. The Alliance had grown beyond anyone's original expectations. What started as a desperate alliance between Earth and a few oppressed species had become a galactic civilization that included most of the known galaxy. Trade flowed freely between worlds that had been enemies for centuries. Scientific knowledge advanced faster than ever before as different species shared their discoveries. Cultural exchange flourished as beings learned about traditions and art forms from across the galaxy. Human music was performed by crystallite orchestras whose mineral bodies created sounds no organic throat could produce. Delph poetry was translated into energy patterns that Luminari could experience directly. Kethfer warrior dances were taught to human students, who added their own variations to the ancient forms. The transformation had not been without challenges. Some species found it difficult to abandon centuries of mistrust and competition. Few Federation loyalists still operated terrorist cells that tried to destabilize Alliance worlds. Economic systems had to be rebuilt from scratch to eliminate the exploitation that had characterized the old order, but the problems were being solved through the same cooperation that had won the war. When the Vorthan Republic struggled with food production after gaining independence, Alliance agricultural experts from a dozen species worked together to develop new farming techniques suited to their world's unique conditions. When the spiral arm mining colonies faced economic collapse, Alliance economists helped them transition to knowledge-based industries that used their workers' skills rather than just their labor. President Mary Campbell's second inaugural address took place 5 years after the Alliance victory. The chamber was even more crowded now, with representatives from over 800 species. New members continued to join every month as word spread about the benefits of cooperative government. We have proven that diversity is strength and that cooperation creates possibilities no single species could achieve alone, Mary told the assembled delegates. Earth's greatest contribution to the galaxy was not our military power or our technology, but our belief that everyone deserves respect and freedom. Captain Bill Morgan's exploration ship departed Earth that same day, heading for unexplored regions beyond the galactic rim. His crew included volunteers from dozens of worlds, all eager to carry the Alliance's message of hope and cooperation to whatever new civilizations they might discover among the stars. Earth had become a superpower not through conquest but through inspiration. showing the galaxy that there was a better way to live among the stars than the endless cycle of domination and submission that had characterized galactic civilization for millennia.